Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film at Atlanta's LGBTQ Film Festival. We are celebrating our 35th anniversary this year with some amazing programming. One of the films that we all love is Maybe Someday, which is playing at the Midtown Arts Cinema on Thursday, September 29th at 9 p.m. And the day after it begins streaming. I'm very, very lucky tonight to have a lot of the principals from the film. We have the director, writer, and lead, Michelle Ehlen, who plays Jay. We have Charlie Steers, who plays Tommy, and Shaela Cook, who plays Jess. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. This is great to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all enjoyed the film very much. Well, I mean, obviously, we'll start with the basic question. Michelle, how did this film come up for you?
Yeah, I mean, so the film is loosely inspired by my own divorce and cross-country move from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yeah.
So the relationships in the film are all based on people that I've known, and the emotional truth is there. But so much of the story has been fictionalized to kind of make sense of it as a movie.
Tell us a little bit about Jay.
Yeah, so I play the main character of Jay. I'm in the process of separating from my wife and struggling to move forward with the next chapter of my life. So Jay is, she's struggling with the heartbreak and grief that I feel like we don't see a lot portrayed on screen. And a lot of times I feel like movies gloss over that part in our lives that I think is very relatable for people. So and through the course of the movie, through meeting Tommy's character, who Charlie plays, and Jess's character that Shaela plays, Jay starts, we start to see changes, and we start to see her opening up. And I don't want to give away too much, but that sort of gives you sort of like the basic sort of premise.
Okay. Charlie, tell us a little bit about Tommy.
Tommy is a slightly complicated individual who has clearly been he's been hurt by love in the past, and likes to keep people at an arm's distance, but meets Jay and thinks he has a project on his hands. And they quickly form an almost rom-com like friendship, and go on some fun adventures together throughout the film to help aid in Jay's journey.
And Shaela, tell us a little bit about Jess.
Jess is, she's now a single mother. She's Jay's best friend. They grew up together, and she married her high school sweetheart and recently got out of the marriage a couple of years previous to the movie. So she spent a lot of her adulthood as a married woman and is kind of rediscovering herself and helping her daughter navigate being in a divorced home. And she's found that a way to relate to Jay. So she's opened her doors up to Jay and Jay's struggle, and hoping to reconnect with Jay, but also reconnect with herself and build a new life going forward.
This film is, Michelle, this film is very character driven, and kudos to you for that. Did you, when you wrote this script, did you write it for anybody with your actors in mind, or how did that work?
I mean, Shaela was in my last two projects, Heterosexual Jill and S&M Sally. And I mean, this movie is very different than those. But I did have her in mind to play the role of Jess. And I sort of had myself in mind to play the role of Jay, but I wanted to write the script first before I completely committed to it, because I didn't want knowing that I would cast myself to affect the way that I wrote that character. But everybody else, we auditioned, and we found Charlie through an audition, and the characters that play, there's flashbacks to the 90s, so there's younger versions of my character and Jess's character, and we found those characters through an audition, and that was a lot of fun, finding those younger counterparts to kind of round out our story and open up the backstory and open things up like emotionally and visually too.
Yeah, it's a terrific ensemble, so congratulations on you all. I like the film a lot. I particularly liked the friendship, the relationship between Jay and Tommy, because that's not the kind of relationship we get to see a lot of in movies. Would y'all agree with that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I like originally, I mean, even though the movie, like I say, is loosely based on my own divorce, a lot of my way into the story was I wanted to portray a friendship between a gay man and a lesbian, because I don't feel like it's represented on screen a lot. And so the first draft of the script was very much focusing on Tommy and Jay, and more of Lily, and the flashbacks were added later to kind of round out Jay's story and Jay's journey. But that was really sort of like a starting point for me, was that friendship. Charlie, did you want to add anything about that?
I think in a way that the relationship between Tommy and Jay actually fills some voids for each of them during the time of the film. Tommy, I think specifically, is looking for something to fill the void of not having a romantic relationship, and Jay is a safe choice.
Yeah, and that's exactly for Jay too. I mean, Jay's not ready for another romantic relationship either, and so they find sort of like this platonic companionship. And for Jay, I don't want to give away too much, so maybe I should stop there. But it's kind of like this idea of like two lonely people coming together for a period of time. Yeah. And also, we didn't mention that Tommy's character is this amateur comedian. So even though the film has some heaviness to it, it also has a surprisingly amount of lightness and comedy to it. And even though his comedy isn't so great on stage, off stage, Tommy's character really shines.
Yeah, very, very amateur comedian.
but off stage, Tommy's really funny, I think.
Thanks.
Shaela and Charlie, did you find that you brought some of yourself to the characters, or were the characters pretty much well defined enough when you saw the script?
Charlie, do you want to go first, or?
Sure. Michelle knows this. Right after I got the part, I was talking to my father, and he asked me a similar question. Is the character anything like you? And I said, the only thing that's different is I don't camp. I found a lot of similarities to Tommy, and to the point where there were some interesting acting challenges for me, specifically the first time where the character Tommy meets Jay. I got very nervous to all of a sudden I had to get this new person to be my friend, and I got a lot of insecurities. And during that filming of that scene, it was actually my toughest scene to film, I think.
Okay. Sure.
I think that there are parallels to Jess with me, but I am a mother. I have a little one who's actually now about the age of the character in the movie. At the time, he was a little younger. But there's differences too. I didn't marry out of high school and have kind of, that homemaker wife life. But I do think that internally there's a connection, like feeling disconnected from a part of yourself. I've been through breakups. I understand how raw it is. I'm very protective of my child. So there's common ground that we can find with Jess. She's a sweeter person, I think, than I am. But she does have some bite. So yeah, she's maybe like a cousin of mine as far as similarities.
Okay. All right. Michelle, how do you compare this to the other films that you've written and directed?
Yeah, so the other films, the Butch Jamie trilogy, they're flat out comedies. I mean, there's some, emotional truth to them, some groundedness to them. Mm-hmm. But for me, this is, a very different genre. And originally, even though there's some comedy in it, but originally when I approached it, I was like, I wanted to take on a new challenge with it. So originally I was like, I don't want it to be funny at all. And I want to see how can I engage audiences on a whole nother level, like an emotional level. Because I guess I got to the point where I kind of felt like, this sounds like a humble brag, but I kind of felt like it was easy to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I had the audience if I could make them laugh, but like, what else could I do as a storyteller to engage people in a story? So that's kind of like how I approached it initially. Now, of course, the comedy found its way in, and the movie is so much better for it because it rounds it out, and it does add lightness and levity to break up those more emotionally tense scenes. And also, it's also an interesting experience watching it screen in a theater because of the emotionally heavy scenes. Even something that might be just like slightly funny will get big laughs because the audience is ready for it and wanting that break and the tension.
Michelle, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I was reading your director notes, and you say that you see a lot of movies sort of portray the idea that romantic love can cure all wounds. Can you briefly touch on that? I mean, you didn't want this movie to be like that. Can you sort of touch on that a little bit again?
Yeah, and I think actually, well, the quote that I'm thinking of was that this idea that time heals all wounds. Is that maybe what you're referring to? Yeah, and I mean, in romantic love, that's another kind of, I think, mythology. And so it was important for me that it was more about Jay finding herself and her independence in the wake of this breakup, rather than lapsing into this, a romantic relationship right away. But yeah, I feel like there's this idea that time heals your pain for you. And I don't think it's true. And so I feel like we need to be active participants in our own healing process. And so this is idea of Jay dragging her feet, and Jess says kind of like, you can drag your feet for as long as you want to, but you're basically not going to make any progress until you're ready and you decide to move forward. And I think that's it was an important lesson for me in my life, and something that I tried to weave in a bit in the movie.
Okay. Obviously COVID's had a huge effect on the last couple of years. But I mean, for all of you, what's it been like to actually be able to get out again and see movies in person and do Q&As and get that audience feedback?
Yeah, Shaela, do you want to take this one?
Sure. It's been fun. We recently had a screening. The audience was just so engaged, and they clicked into some things that, like, they clicked in all these little tiny things that were woven throughout. And it was really rewarding to see people catching on to those moments. You never know if something's going to translate until it does. And that's one of the weird things about doing film, is you're not sitting next to the people as they watch it typically. Whereas theater, which is my background, is you get that immediate feedback. So it's really nice to have that kind of, sorry, I bounced my thing, that interchange of energy. And then as far as being out into the world, it's been really great. I've been very, very sheltered during this pandemic. So it's really nice to, experience life again.
Okay. Charlie?
Well, this is my first or second Q&A. Actually, I moved to New York toward the end of COVID, so I'm having a little FOMO seeing Michelle and Shaela having so much fun out on the West Coast with all the screenings. I wish I could have joined, but it's not been in the cards just yet.
Okay.
But watching excitedly from afar.
Okay. Great. So Michelle, I know that you've been doing quite a lot of festivals this summer and fall. What's next for the film?
Yeah, so we're screening at festivals through the fall and into the winter, and I'm planning to continue into the spring. So at some point next year, when things sort of slow down, we will do a wide online release. Details to come. So yeah, and so the latest, if anyone's interested, follow us on social media, and we're posting all the updates of where it's gonna go next.
Okay, great. The film is Maybe Someday. It is playing at the Midtown Arts Cinema on Thursday, September the 29th at 9 p.m. and it will be streaming the day afterwards. I think you're really going to like it. Our programmers were very, 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 very enamored with it. Michelle, thank you so much. Charlie Steers, Shaela Cook, thanks for making this film, and thanks for talking to us and talking a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you all so very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.